Maurice Nicoll, Psychological Commentaries, Volume 4, Amwell, May 26, 1951. The difference between internal and external considering. We have recently been talking about the work from the standpoint of the emotional center, showing how, if the emotions are wrong, we get the work wrongly. And we have been speaking about the right emotions in connection with the ideas of the work because, as was said, if you're afraid, you cannot get this work rightly arranged in yourself. Now, we spoke about two of the great ideas of the work, namely negative emotions and identifying. And in connection with negative emotions, it was said that we have a right not to be negative. And in commentary, I expanded this and I said, we have a right not to identify, the most difficult thing to accept. Today, we will try to talk about another two great ideas of the work, namely internal considering and external considering. As you know, the work says we waste most of our energy through internal considering. It also says that we must replace internal considering by external considering. Now, what does that mean to you? I fancy it means very little because most of you think internal considering is external considering, and certainly I can assure you that I am learning a great deal about the difference between these two, which I had not seen before. Now, when you are internally considering, you are identified. When you're externally considering, you're not identified. I was talking some time ago, fortunately some years ago, to a woman who said she was bringing every stray cat into her house to help it get on in life, and she thought this was external considering. I might have said to her, which I certainly did not, why do you not consider your nephew who has 6 children and no money? She did not see that all the money she was giving to the cats might have been given to the nephew. Now, this is internal considering or external considering. I'll leave that answer to you. Now, let us speak seriously about the difference between internal considering and external considering. When you internally consider, you want your own way, and you're very kind to people who appreciate you, especially if you can benefit slightly from them. But when you have to deal with people who do not particularly agree with you and you want to teach them the work, you have to then practice external considering. A person might say, I don't really like you, and yet you think the person is useful for the work, so you have to shift from internal considering to external considering. All external considering is conscious. All internal considering is mechanical. When a man or woman favors you, you are delighted and you think that you are externally considering, but that's not at all the case. You're simply satisfied in your self-love. And in such a case, your work as a teacher would be extremely weak. Supposing I think a man or woman is worthwhile to bring into the work for the sake of the work, that is, for the third line of the work, and supposing these people dislike me and make rude remarks about me, and at the same time I see that these people are useful to the work, I'm no longer internally considering it, namely thinking how badly they talk about me, but thinking about the third line of the work, and therefore externally considering. To externally consider another man or woman is not to think of them from what you want, that is, from your self-love or self-interest. External considering means to put yourself in the position of the other person. Internal considering is to put him or her in your position, which means simply ingrowing toenails, indicating that you are frightened to combat for the sake of the work. If I say to myself that I would like that person for my own sake, I am internally considering. If I think that I would like that person for the sake of the work, then I'm externally considering, or probably am. People whom you bring into the work should not necessarily increase your self-esteem because they love you. If I have a difficult person to take and I think that this person is of some use to the work, I shall have to externally consider him apart from vanity or self-emotions, and then I shall be able to study him, put myself in his place, and see what is his difficulties, what they are, and so on. This would be a definite conscious act. We were speaking about negative emotions and the right not to have them. We then spoke of identifying and carried on the same idea that we have a right not to identify. As regards internal considering, It is always based on identifying, and so we have the right not to internally consider. But external considering is never based on identifying, for it is a conscious act. As I said earlier in this paper, internal considering is mechanical and external considering is conscious. So if you want to increase consciousness, you have to consider what the work says about methods or means of doing so.